My name is Jennifer Mackinday and I'm a caregiver. My brother was wounded in Mosul, Iraq in 2005 during a combat mission. He drove over an improvised explosive device. The injuries he suffered that day are still with him. He has partial vision and hearing loss. He has a traumatic brain injury, damage to his spine, and probably most severe is his post-traumatic stress. But the bomb that blew him up, it really kind of blew up my life right along with it. Caregiving was new and scary. I was really isolated and on my own, and I didn't reach out. And that ultimately led me to a point in my life where I contemplated suicide. One of the resources that we had known about after my brother was wounded was Wounded Warrior Project. And once we discovered that Wounded Warrior Project not only had programs for my brother, but they had them for me and my son as well, we really began engaging with other families, and it turns out there's a lot of them who are just like ours. But once I started spending time with other caregivers and finding out what resources were available, my whole life started to change. Because we know what it's like to love someone and care for them so much, and yet be unable to do the things that they need to continue to heal. And so once you recognize that other people are in the same boat as you, you're never going to drown. And that's when I realized that telling my story could actually help change the lives of other caregivers. And I think for me, that's really been the key to my healing journey. Before my younger brother James' army boots ever hit the ground in Mosul, Iraq, we had a plan. He had a 6-figure life insurance policy and a will, and we had a discussion about what to do if he were to die in combat. He told me that he wanted to be buried in the graveyard near our grandparents, and that he wanted my son to inherit his video gaming system. The worries of a 20-year-old headed to war. But what we didn't have a plan for was what was hidden in the gutter of a littered Mosul side street. The improvised explosive device that my brother drove over on January 25, 2005 detonated underneath the vehicle, blew him up, and has forever changed our family's path. My brother sustained wounds that day that are with him still, including traumatic brain injury, damage to his spine, vision and hearing loss, and a whole host of other conditions, including post-traumatic stress. He's had a number of surgeries to reconstruct his left elbow and his right foot, and to repair other damage that was sustained that day. And the bomb that blew him up really blew up my life right along with it. I quit my job and went to be with him at the Army Medical Center after he returned to the United States. I wanted to make sure that he had the best care possible, a loving advocate who was there to make sure that they understood what the doctors were saying, that they asked the right questions. I wanted to just be there for him 24/7, no matter what. After we left the Army Medical Center and returned to our small town, I realized that we no longer had that family support from the Army, and that we were really on our own. Our friends and family didn't really understand what we were going through. They didn't know what help to offer, and I didn't know what help to ask for. Years went by, and I found myself further and further away from my support structure that I had before my brother went to war, and doing so much of his care on my own that I really stopped taking care of myself. I did try to go to the gym, to go to the grocery store, but my brother had this problem. It was called a vestibular impairment. He had trouble keeping his balance. He could be standing right here in front of you, go to take a step, and fall right over. And sometimes when he fell, he hurt himself. I talked to the doctors about this, and they said there wasn't really anything that they could do for him, that he should use his walker and his cane and be supervised 24/7. That's really tough for a young man in his 20s, have to spend all of his time with his sister, and to have to be confined, to lose his independence, to lose his dignity. Sometimes when my brother fell, he hurt himself, and one of those times, it was apparent that he had a broken arm. We were in the car making our way to the VA Medical Center, and I remember that it started to rain, and it was cold outside, and the rain started to turn to sleet. And as we kept making our way down that road at night, headed towards the VA, my windshield wipers were going back and forth and slurring the ice on the windshield into one just great big long line of lights. And I really couldn't see where we were going or even think about what we were going through. I just remember thinking about all of the years of work and struggle, and that no matter how much loving care I gave my brother, he was still ending up with a broken arm. He was still suffering, and there wasn't anything that I could do about it. I really could feel the burden of all those years on my shoulders, and I didn't know what to do. And as the headlights kept coming at me and the ice kept building up on my windshield, I remember gripping my steering wheel tighter and tighter and starting to think, well, maybe there was something that I could do. Maybe there was something that I could do to take all the pain away forever. If I jerked that steering wheel, we would go into the oncoming traffic and it would all be over with. I remember thinking, well, maybe there'll be a headline in the newspaper that reads, "Purple Heart recipient dies on icy road." You know, 1 in 5 people who attempt to take their own life actually make that decision in 5 minutes or less. And that was my 5 minutes. And as we made our way down that dark, icy road alone, and as I was about to make a fateful decision for our family, our phone rang. You see, a few weeks earlier, we had attended an event with Wounded Warrior Project. Well, I'll be honest with you, I really didn't want to go. I was so isolated and so overworked, so burnt out, that I just couldn't see myself having a good time with other families. But we went, and it wasn't terrible. I remember my brother was with other warriors, and that was nice to see him have some camaraderie. Before we left the event, another family member told me that they were starting a Facebook group of all things to share pictures. And so I joined the group. And I noticed in the weeks leading up to that night on the icy road that members, warriors, and their family members were sharing more than just pictures in that private Facebook group. They were asking for resources, looking for support, talking to each other, and asking for help. And so that night, before we left for the hospital, I went in that Facebook group and wrote a message that a Marine veteran who'd been at the event read for exactly what it was, which was a cry for help. And as I made my way down that dark, icy road and our phone rang, that Marine was on the other end. And all he said was, "Tell me where you two are because I'm coming to help." And by the time we got to the hospital parking lot, he was already there. And just like this logo, he scooped us both up and got us inside to get us the help that we so desperately needed. My brother needed 4 hours of surgery to repair his shattered elbow, and I needed emergency mental health intervention. And the reason that Marine knew what we were going through, the reason he recognized my message as a cry for help, was because he had been trained by Wounded Warrior Project as a peer to provide support to other warriors and their families when they were in need. Now, because Marines don't stop until the mission is finished, he also made some phone calls that night on our behalf. He talked to Wounded Warrior Project and told them that there was a family in Indiana in crisis. And so they helped make some arrangements to send me away. Now, I didn't have to wear a straitjacket, and I didn't go to a padded room, although some days that doesn't sound too bad. No, they made arrangements for me to go to Denver, Colorado for a week to spend time with 19 other women, the mothers of service members wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, we spent our time together in a very structured environment, supported by counselors and therapists. We were taught yoga and meditation and some mindful relaxation exercises that could help us deal with our caregiver stress. We also had one-on-one meetings where we made care plans with professionals back home so that when we left Denver, we knew we were going to be safe. And before we left, we had a brief by Wounded Warrior Project where they shared with us details of programs and services that were specialized just to suit our warrior and our family. And that's where I learned about the Independence Program. The Independence Program actually started coming to our home to take care of my brother and started lifting some of that burden off of me. They also helped us connect with a neurologist at a civilian hospital who specialized in treating people with balance disorders just like my brother had. And after a stay, which cost us no money, my brother returned home more independent, needing less supervision, and being able to put his walker and his cane aside. And I'm very happy to tell you he now lives on his own and is part of the community that I never dreamed he could be part of. He has a life coach and he has recreational therapy, and he's building the life that he wants. And I have a lot of time on my hands now too. I was able to return back to work full time, and my brother and I are now siblings again, not just caregiver and care recipient. We do things like go to football games or movies or just enjoy time together. And it's been a wonderful change for our entire family. And none of that would have been possible without Wounded Warrior Project. And none of that would be possible without support from organizations like yours. So from our family to yours, thank you. Thank you.